Hello, everybody. We are back writing some LLM code for our YouTube thumbnailer with Enrique, Jasper. So we thought we would start today from refactoring a little bit. So we've been vibe coding a lot of features. The code base have become a little bit bloated and there's some old stuff and so on. The UI is not perfect, but let's not worry about that now. So the premise we thought we would present today is effectively Enrique, who hasn't really been part of the massive feature flooding that we've been doing with Jasper, would take a look at the code base as a kind of outsider a little bit. You started already yesterday a little bit, but we didn't do much yesterday on that side. So I'd hand it over to Enrique to see what you can find in the code base and how would you approach it to make it a little bit better.
Let me see if I can share my screen. Does it work? Can you guys see my screen?
Looks good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have here the session from yesterday, right, where we got to run this. We had to change the remote port or the local port.
Enrique, you become very quiet when you look at your screen because you look away from your microphone.
Oops. Wait. Does it work better now?
Let me see once you start working.
Okay, then let's take a look at this. What do we have? We have an app.gsx file, right? That seems to be fairly large. Contains the main app function. We're having here some use effects. Preview payload, map error. Okay, so I guess what we would like to do here is to get this refactored and prepare it for usage probably with a team or with more people, right? So something I think we could start doing now that we are using LLMs. Yeah, Jasper.
So before we jump into that, I just wanted to ask a question, Enrique, is what you're thinking is like, assuming that an LLM has no problem reading 1,500 lines of code or whatever, because why not? What would it, apart from the technical ability to read it, what do you think should be the other considerations, right? I mean, as humans, we kind of like, oh, this is horrible, especially if you've written code for a long time, you look at it and it's like, ugh, it looks horrible. But is there anything else we should think about, you reckon?
In terms of an LLM, if we're using something, we talked a little bit about that yesterday, like Gemini or any remote one, the amount of context in this project is probably not going to be a problem, right? Because it doesn't seem very large. The backend is even like 3 Python files, right? So of course there is going to be a database here. Probably, are you guys using a database? I didn't even check the code that much.
I don't think so. Not yet.
Okay, so just a couple of Python files. We have the requirements here, front end. Well, things that I think become relevant are also the agents file that we have here, right? Which I think it's a little bit more focused on the technical side. The layout that we're using here, this is a Flask app. We're talking also about the commands we're using to run the application. Okay, the port, I think this is the port issue that we had here yesterday. Architecture notes. Okay, I think this, in my opinion, this agents markdown, it's a very good start. I'm not sure if something that might not be that easy to grasp for an LLM that is just reading the code base at first is the how the UX flow work. As in, there is going to be this first screen, the second screen. You are supposed to, from a user perspective, like analyze this here, and the screen is going to look like with a menu, etc. It can do it, of course, but maybe something that defines that aspect in the agents will be worth considering.
Right.
Okay. But let's see. I think we can continue the session from yesterday, and something that if I'm jumping on a code base, I don't have any idea of the code base like this one. I don't know anything about the stack that you're using, just a very superficial view. probably my first attempt would be something like explain me this code base as.
Enrique, quickly, just before you start, I don't think you have the latest version. If you check the version control.
Let me check git pull origin main. I think I do, right?
Well, your VS Code is saying no, but yeah, maybe that's a different thing.
I think I'm on the
Okay.
last one. This is the merge branch, Juhani, April 21st.
Okay.
I think this would be the first
Yeah, I
one.
just wonder why the VS Code is saying 5 days ago. Okay. Yeah, never
What
mind.
does it
Ignore me.
Okay, not really sure why I'm doing this. This is actually not, well, it's VS Code, it's anti-gravity, but I have the anti-gravity version. It could be that I open it earlier. Let me actually just do a quick experiment. I'm going to close it and reopen it. Anti-gravity. And probably that updates. And in that case, we might have discovered a bug on the Xcode. I know, still 5 days ago. Git ignore. Okay, no idea what is this. Initial stuff. Okay, maybe that's when the branch was created, I guess. Okay, anyway, let's come here to the latest session. We reloaded. This is something I like from anti-gravity. You can keep track of the last conversation, so allows you very easily to switch context between different projects. In anti-gravity, you also can, well, I guess you guys talk about it, right? You can have like different models and switch between them as you work, so you are not bound into a specific execution of a single model while you're working with something. But let's say we start with this. My first attempt would be something like, please explain me this code base 101, what it does. Text does use, etc. And let's see what we get from here. I'm using here, by the way, Gemini, so I think I have the automatic one, so 3.1 Pro, the low one. Generally, the Gemini 3, I think the Flash one, I think it might be good enough for simple tasks. When you get in something a little bit more complex, I think the Pro definitely outruns the how the Flash work. There are generally benchmarks depending on what you're working on. If you work on Android, there is Google released very recently this benchmark page. I think it's benchmark.android.com, or you can actually find it. And the performance of let me actually see if I can open it here.
I'm super skeptical of these benchmarks. There's so much cheating going on, but yeah, I guess they give some value, right? It's
yeah,
like,
well, I mean,
Volkswagen diesel.
See the Gemini 3 Flash preview, it's at a score of 42%. Gemini 3.1 Pro preview, 72.4. It's funny because GPT 5.4 was released, I guess, like a month ago, and it's already better on the benchmark than Gemini 3.1 Pro. But this is very dynamic. Like you can see every month things change. So sometimes.
So I have like anecdotally, again, anecdotal data is whatever it is. But I found it interesting when I was building the app that I just pushed to F-Droid last midnight, so Claude was very good at writing the Android code, but very bad at writing the Android UI. So I switched between the Gemini when I was writing UI and Claude when I was writing anything else. It felt good, but of course it's just anecdotal, you don't have any real data.
I've heard a few times people saying now that Gemini is really moving ahead in terms of being the one for writing UI. I've kind of switched it almost exclusively for writing any UI stuff.
But then again, the Claude design thing is pretty impressive. I ran a design review of the app I built. I can show it to you at some point. But what it got out was pretty good. Also, the tone is exactly the same as I got from designers before, telling me I'm shit at writing UI.
Is that good? Is that good or bad? I don't know.
Yeah,
well, I mean, on that topic, we definitely need to spend some on-screen time with the guys from Systematic. We are Systematic, and chat to them.
Sure.
about how
Pierre
they're
was
using Claude.
working on something. Pierre's our designer who's was working on the word match stuff. He was extracting a design system out of the code and basically creating a way to keep the LLMs bound to a design system for any future work, which is kind of a good idea. Anyways, Enrique, sorry, jump in.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I think in general, that's also an interesting topic, which we know that some LLMs might be better for certain stacks. I think Gemini is probably better for Google technologies because it has probably been trained on the Google code base, right? So I can imagine things like, I don't know, Android, Dart, Flutter might be better. So I would not be surprised if that happens. But design is like a separate topic, right? So it's not purely technical, which LLM is going to perform better, design systems, etc. I haven't done that much research. I don't really have an answer, but it's a topic I think it could be worth exploring. So yeah, after asking Gemini Flash 3.0 to explain this code base called Snap Thumbnailler. It's a local full stack web application designed to generate branded YouTube thumbnails specifically for the Snap Technology podcast. Blah, blah, blah. What does it do? So far looks accurate. It provides a local web interface where you can type in episode details, primary, secondary title, blah, blah, blah. Drag and drop, upload images as assets, view a live preview, download a fully rendered high quality PNG image. You guys correct me if anything seems to be wrong here. So far seems on point. Backend with Python, Flash, Pillow, REMP and ONNX runtime to do the machine learning, frontend with JavaScript. How do they talk to each other? When you type new text or move a box, the React frontend updated state. It posts that payload to the Python backend on port 5001, the ISO we had yesterday on Mac, which doesn't happen on other platforms, and important quirks. Wide open, no auth, local AI, start scripts. You need to use start scripts to improve it. Okay, then I think we can start thinking about how to refactor this. If I could be checking this as a human, my first thought would be that the objects is very large, and probably that we would need to extract also the UI components from here so they can be reused if typically the application grows, right? Because we don't want them to have them inside this app GSX, which works for small apps. But let's see what the LLM tell us and how far away from this hypothesis. Okay, so we can start with something like, I would like to have this code base refactor to help other humans and LLMs to work on it and minimize conflicts. Propose me some improvement points and let me know also about the main weaknesses you can identify on this project in terms of technical debt. Something like this would work. Can you think of anything else?
Well, just off the top of my head, I guess I don't know whether. Well, let's just go with it. Let's just go with it. Rather, let's see what happens rather than second guessing.
Okay, something important is that I have always the planning here. I never put it in fast. Maybe at some point we can try to run it and do something like don't write me back unless you finish the entire solution and don't bother me and see what it does. Did you guys try, by the way, the in-browser that comes with anti-gravity?
Juhani has.
I did, yeah. It's pretty freaky when it just opens browser and starts browsing the internet. They also done it since when you open a browser, it kind of, this is Chrome. It says it's AI mode, and it has this blue halo around it, and it's just doing stuff.
Yeah, it's super convenient also to try. So one of the things I like from anti-gravity, I use a lot the console also, Gemini, but you can drop images because it's on the console, right? It's a command line utility. Anti-gravity seems to be like, well, we know what it is. It's a Visual Studio plugin or re-image of the standard Visual Studio. It provides support for images, so you can drag and drop, and the image gets uploaded into the API from Google Gemini, analyzes it, so integrates all those things very well. I think probably has some safety checks built in, because it burns a lot of tokens. So when you're using anti-gravity, you can see that it's like 3-4x what you burn on the command line interface. So yeah, for things when design becomes very relevant, or also when you need to check an external website. Sometimes you want to like do things like open this website, analyze the UI, how it looks like, and come up with a judgment or a proposal. The command line utility, of course, can use things like CURL or wget in order to get the HTML, but then it's going to be a different model. It's a model that is going to be analyzing text, whereas if you analyze the image, you're doing like image recognition. So for certain things as well. Let's see the result that we get here for the LLM. We get this master plan, got components. Okay. As expected, the app.jsx is large, and backend, are monoliths. They handle business logic, data models, state rendering, and API logic. API fragility, there is no data validation in the front end. Okay, we didn't think about it. Sends a slightly malformed JSON object. The backend will crash with a 500 server error instead of gracefully rejecting it. Memory and performance constraints, passing giant space 64 strings back and forth, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we can open the, yeah.
So hey, what it's encoding the images as base 64 strings. Is that what it's doing now?
Seems to be doing that, right? Passing giant base 64 strings back and forth multiple times a second for the live preview is putting harder stress on the network.
Yeah. Okay. That would. Yeah, that would do it. Okay.
Yeah, and when you click on open, what you saw is this plan, a little bit more detail. I also like this because Gemini later, as it works on them, it starts treating them as bullet points. So it marks them as done or not done or fail, and then allows you also to follow a little bit. You can also come up with plans for this implementation plan, as in, okay, I don't want you to do this, I want you to do this. You didn't focus on something I wanted. So something that as a human, I would think of is creating tests to make sure that things are not breaking, right? So what we have right now, we like what we have right now, it works, and we want to verify that it doesn't break in the, I mean, I'm not assessing this as in, we like it, but in a real project, you want to protect the result of the refactoring, right? So that's something that's, as a human, I would consider. Of course, the LLM is faster than and better than we, but probably if we don't provide it, I think we could expect things like to break at some point, so we still need to do the manual check, and having a test would make us, good allows us to run it first and run it after and see what happens.
Let's so the thing in my head at the moment is we're going through this fast iteration cycle where we're like, okay, it should be like this, and then we do something, and then it opens a new idea. Oh, it should maybe be like this one now, and it's a sort of organic process of improvements as we go. And at the moment, it doesn't help that it's an echo chamber, right? We don't have an external party to kind of guide us in this sense. But I guess there's a natural point where tests start to make sense, right? When things start to stabilize and features start to become part of the furniture, you know, we don't change the features very much. So I don't think there's a fixed point when that comes. I think it's just almost like a gut feeling. It's like, okay, this thing is now starting to look like it should be. So my 2 cents is we're not quite there yet.
I'd say there's a kind of interesting difference between, you know, normal coding. When you do normal coding, what you say makes sense. But when you do LLMs, you know, the overhead of maintaining test suite is very low. So dropping in a test suite early doesn't really hinder you same way as it manually. However, as you say, it would also be waste of time or waste of tokens. What it could
Give me a
be
second, guys.
What it could be is to basically define something like smoke tests. That's what I would do at early stage. You know, every time you deploy, run smoke test. So, because the LLMs get lazy, they just they just push stuff out there that doesn't even compile. I get when I'm writing the white React front end. Sometimes it deploys code that doesn't compile. I'm like, okay, well, why, you know? I guess
I've still been working on another project where I've been trying to say, well, how about we try and do things like cucumber tests, right? So behavior-driven testing, rather than, I mean, as well as maybe more classic unit or sort of component level testing. And that's kind of interesting. I mean, I guess that's not quite smoke testing, but
well, it's smoke testing plus, right?
It's sort of, I think it's, and I'm probably mashing up terms here, but I like to kind of call it sort of boundary testing, right? You're testing at the boundary of, in this case, the behavior of the system is external, right? So it's a kind of a white box test.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, wrong way, black box test.
But but I think that's kind of they could be an interesting topic in general, like how to utilize testing, because maintaining testing really isn't a lot of work now. But tests are worth nothing if they're bad tests.
Yeah.
So if they just test that the one is one, might as well not run that stuff. I'd love to have like end-to-end UI tests for every application all the time. Of course. Generate all user paths, run all of them. But when do you run them?
Well, that's the next problem, right? Is that the depth of your testing isn't just about development effort. It's actually about the practicalities of running that on a regular basis. And the bigger the system, the more end-to-end infrastructure you have, to the point where, for example, in banking systems, you can't really run an end-to-end test because you can't just spin up a new sort of underlying banking infrastructure that's faithful to what production would look like. So the more you kind of try to hide the gaps, or the more gaps you end up creating, the less value the tests have over time, or the more potential they have for being misleading. So yeah, but anyway, that's probably, you're right, a long topic for us to kind of get into. But just for today, I mean, should we put a pin in the writing tests for today, and just get into refactoring, or what do you feel like?
I'm fine. I'm just throwing ideas to, because I think also what we do as humans is not necessarily what we're doing with LLMs, right? Like for me as a human, I would not start refactoring a code base without having tests in place, because then I'm going to break it. But I do, especially a code base that I haven't worked on, but an LLM might be much better at it. So,
or as Juhani said, do we want to put in some smoke tests rather than anything else?
Kind of, Enrique, you have this experience this a little bit more, maybe asking your, it's a process question relating to the testing. So I wrote, when I used the word match app I've been writing, I have in the agent, I have the, when I do deployment, I want you to run all the Python tests or the backend tests before you deploy. If they fail, fix the test. If they fail, stop the deployment. And then I have the same instruction for, it's a little bit like a local CI, a little bit like, kind of, which I do like, but I run those tests only when I deploy to the real backend, because I don't want to, whenever I develop, I don't want to have them. So how would you structure this kind of thing? Because also, like I was saying at Jasper when you were picking up your food, is that sometimes when you're writing code, the LLM gets lazy and it deploys React code that doesn't even compile. And like, okay, you could have at least caught that before you try to say the app is running well. So there would be like that's why the smoke testing thing, it's like, should we have a smoke test that's running always after code is changed and the LLM thinks it's ready? And then comprehensive CI/CD testing suite when you deploy, or how would you structure this? What would be the best way to do it?
So what I have been working with my apps, I have generally these agents markdown that ends up growing as I work on the application, and includes a few instructions, not only the ones we see here that are described in the code base and what the code base is doing, but also how to work with the code base. For instance, something that I always give them on GitHub. Now I'm migrating everything to Codeberg, but I always have everything on a remote repository. The reason is also that I can work from anywhere, right? So I'm here with a laptop. I might go to Vietnam and I have another computer there. And what I want to do is to, one thing I have noticed is that the LLMs, especially Gemini, tends to, at the beginning, unless you give any other instruction, to squash all the commits into one and repush it. So, which I think is not a good practice, right? Because you want to keep a history of the things that you've been trying and stuff. It also tries to commit things immediately. That's another error that it does. Finish an implementation, commits everything following the historical trend with a semantic versioning, for example. And I don't want the LLM to commit something until the LLM has my green light. As in, this finishes, I know it works. And precisely because of this, one thing that I personally like is to create a set of tests. I think it's more for me than for the LLM to see that everything works and that the LLM is not breaking anything. My process generally, but this is something also very dynamic that might change as LLMs evolve, is I have these instructions. The LLM is not going to commit anything, is not going to push anything, is not going to create any branch unless I say that, okay, this is finished, this work. I might use some keywords or some full instruction that the LLM understands. And part of finish means that the tests are passing. Again, this is something more for me than for the LLM. So I can see that whatever this new this new prompt is doing, it has been verified, it works, and I trust the LLM to get it published to the GitHub. As you work, and I think one problem or one situation, not really a problem with LLMs, is that our iterations become shorter and shorter, and we work faster and faster. So what before took you 1 week to do, maybe you get it done in 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, which means that by the end of the day, you have so many new things. And it's a little bit easy to lose control, right? I found myself in the situation where when I'm developing a web app, that something broke like 10 commits ago, and it was probably my fault, right? Like I don't think it was just the LLM. Maybe it was the LLM doing something wrong, but maybe it was also me giving contradictory instructions to the LLM or not being clear enough, and the LLM took some decision on how to organize the screen and how to do stuff. So I try for me, to keep control, and this is the way I do it. So that also helps me if later in time I discover something to get back to the commit when I know it was working and point out the LLM like, hey, this broke. I would expect this part of the application to work like here. Fix it, but don't change anything unrelated that happened in between. And I think that's naturally going to happen as the software grows. This is a small project, vibe coded, but imagine if at some point you start adding authorization maybe, or users, or a synchronization with local device, or a mobile app that can do anything, or you can connect it with your YouTube account and automatically publish a thumbnail. That's going to grow, and mistakes are going to happen. I think it's important also to be able to recover from those mistakes.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay, so yeah, as you want, but I think we can. So you said, Juhani, we can consider some smoke test here, right?
Well, I would leave it to your consideration. I'm very happy to do either way.
Let's write here something. Propose me also some smoke test that can verify that the current implementation, or that verify the current implementation. These tests will be used to determine if the code breaks at some point.
I'd love to see then you explaining how do you use the test? How do you like? I know we talked about the agents definitions, but if you can hook them up in the right way, you would do that.
Yeah, I think this also comes with the next one of the next things, which is the definition of DOM for an agent. What means that something has been done? Probably that your plan has been implemented, that the tests are passing. When I confirm that it's done, then you can think of committing this automatically. I have updated the implementation plan artifact with a dedicated smoke test verification plan section. Okay, front-end visual test. After every refactoring phase, especially the front-end component split, verify the core flows, live preview resilience, preset cycle, export integrity. Okay. Let's talk also about the definition of done, right? I know it's getting more complicated, but yeah, it's better. Well, we can lose now 1 hour in order to get 1 minute faster. But yeah, let's try, for example, since we're working 3 of us, let's talk about the Git bar, for example. I want to establish a definition of done. Definition of done for you. When I confirm you that your implementation plan works, I want you to commit this in a single commit using semantic versioning, and push this to the remote repository.
So this is something I haven't been brave enough to do. I don't let the LLMs touch my Git.
Yeah,
Other than
you're
when
gonna
they
be
do
you're gonna be
clever
surprised. I'm doing it. I'm also in the web application I'm building, for example, and using release please to control the releases. So, but now that we're 3, for example, it makes sense to create pull requests, right? So if I'm working at home, you can check it. And what you can also instruct is to use the GitHub command line utility. That means that you don't even need to create a pull request. The agent is able to work on this, is going to finish, and as soon as I confirm it, it's going to create the branch, create the commit, create the PR, and at some point we can even like hook it up with okay, now use the API from Nextcloud Talk in order to send a message to Johannes and saying that I finished this thing. But let's just start
please do that. Every commit, just send a message to Juhani. That would be fantastic. I'm going to do the same. I hadn't thought about that. In fact, I'm just going to use your phone number and send you an SMS as well, in case you miss it.
Okay, let's see what we get here from the LLM. But I think I really like this command line utility because it opens a crazy gate of doing anything you want. You can, you have one for GitHub. You have, right now there are an Android command line utility, ADB command line utility. We come a little bit more from the mobile world, right? But you can like create an emulator, start an emulator, run the APK, verify the screen, download the screen, so it really starts interconnecting many things. And I think at that point, we've been talking also about the agent orchestration. Opens this great gate where an agent can just start taking decisions on the emulator, like I upload APKs, download them, and I'm an expert in uploading my binaries to the emulator, another web agent, another one that is, I don't know, connecting with your backend. Okay, let's see what we have here. I have completely updated implement. Yeah, Jasper.
No, on that topic, I think that would be super interesting from a testing perspective, right? It's like, I know you did a bunch of work on automating UI testing in mobile. I think we should dig into that a bit more at some point. But not just that, but all of that device farm testing was like super specialists, and there were whole companies dedicated for doing that. But now, I mean, the hard bit is getting the devices and whatever, but putting that together feels like it should be pretty trivial now, right? I mean, that might have been also an interesting thing for a live stream series is building a sort of a mini device farm. I don't know if we have enough devices for testing some stuff and just kind of seeing what that looks like.
If you've been Android developer for 15 years, you have enough devices.
You probably, yeah. Well, I mean,
I can open
looking around.
boxes and there's enough for farm.
Yeah. How old are they though? How many of them actually work?
I'm not going to say the best devices, but we have many of them. Yeah, I was precisely last week. Which do you know the OnePlus, the first OnePlus?
Yeah.
I had my first OnePlus, and it was still turning on and connecting to the Wi-Fi. Of course, I didn't open any app in like, I don't know, like 13 years, but the apps were still there, and I could see like all messages and pictures.
Oh my God. I have to say Android's pretty good on that side. It's pretty resilient. Okay.
Okay, then we see that the LLM has updated the definition of done upon completing the agreed upon task and successfully passing verification. Okay, let's see what it does. To me, I would have preferred to get a confirmation that I have to manually approve everything, but let's see. Okay, proceed. Let's see where we go.
Okay. So I'm just going to make an observation, Enrique. Is like the part of the hardening that we're going through here is kind of also process hardening, right? It's not just like, hey, let's just refactor and just make things look better or feel more like we would write it by hand. It's actually, let's tighten up the process.
Exactly. Something that, but this is part also of these so-called safety words and guardrails and safety checks, right? That you impose some direction on the LLM work. So there is this vibe coding thing that has been widely misinterpreted, in my opinion, of just letting the agent running wild and no control, and you don't verify anything. That's very quick, right? You end up with things you were not even expecting. The agent is taking decisions for you, but in serious companies, you need to have a process, right? Like, and I think that's the difference between this 100x productivity and minus 100x productivity, where you end up fixing a lot of crap that the agent is doing because at some point you have lost control. So I think in modern development, as much as the LLMs are, of course, very good, very productive, they can do things that we can't at a different pace. They need to do it in the right direction, because if you start running in the direction that is not the right one, you'll need to like push it back 180 degrees, and that's going to have a cost, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so here we see that he's trying to do an MKDir. Well, I mean, if since we're doing some live coding, I think at some point I could even remove the planning mode, but I do personally do it because I don't know when it's going to delete some folder, when it's going to start hallucinating. I was a few weeks ago, I mentioned this to Juhani, working on a different project, and I use crazy amount of tokens. I think I hit 1 billion at some point. So really like burning, the factory of Google, and at some point it lost context completely. It didn't know what it was doing, and it found a bug, and it tried to open an internal Google website like corp.google.com in order to report a bug for an internal team. Which of course it doesn't work on my computer, so I see that opens the browser, it starts trying to navigate to this website. I don't have any username, but the problem in one of those is that it might decide that this doesn't work, I'm gonna remove this /home folder, because again, I think we are underestimating the problems that can come with LLMs.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that feels to me one of the worst outcomes, this sort of destructive nature, where LLM's just like, I couldn't really figure out how to solve the problem, so I'm just going to either bypass it, I'm just going to delete the thing, I'm going to insert a completely different implementation approach that actually is not what you even asked for.
Interestingly, I haven't run it with Claude or Gemini, but with the Mistral I run it constantly. When I was trying to get the backend verification certificate security working, it just went like, doesn't work. Okay, I have bypassed it. Now it works. Great. Now anybody can go just call the backend or the methods now work. But that's kind of, you need to be quite careful with tools. But I haven't run into that on Claude or Gemini.
No, I think that since December, those models have stopped doing that. December-ish.
Okay, we're getting here slowly more plans. So now we're going to create the docs directory, and we're going to copy the refactoring plan. I don't know. This is strictly necessary, but anyway, we can just. You also keep a history here of the thinking and the commands that is running. So probably this is something that if you're in a corporate environment, you might want to keep track of also to store exactly what the LLM has been doing in case you need to track and do any sort of observability.
Now, there was a super interesting, I'll share it with you. In fact, maybe I'll find it and I'll share it here in the chat. There was an interesting talk. I forwarded to Juhani over the weekend, and I apologize to the guy because I can't remember his name, but I'll put it in the chat anyway. He had a really interesting idea that at the end of a coding session with the LLM, he'd asked the LLM to basically do a retrospective on all the things that it did well and all the things that it kind of slightly failed to do, and then make recommendations on how to improve, how the LLM would suggest that him as the operator of the LLM would improve their interaction so that it wouldn't happen again. And so that sort of continuous improvement loop is super interesting. Whilst you're finishing this up, I'm going to go and find that video and post it in here because I think it's worth sharing.
Yeah, this is this topic of meta development of LLMs, using LLMs to improve work with LLMs, using LLMs to develop new LLMs. That happened with the latest version from ChatGPT. They have a note on the website saying that I think it was the 5 point something, the latest one. We use ChatGPT, the latest model, in order to develop the latest model. So they're asking probably the model about explain us this, I don't know, use the training data from here and stuff, which is, it's crazy, right? If you think in exponential terms, that's when you achieve the, works the same for virus infections or investment, right? Like when the people start, the people that have been infected by second generation and third generation start around generation, that's the exponential growth. When you start getting dividends on the dividends that were already paid in previous years, this is an exponential explosion. When you start creating LLMs using the output from LLMs, that's the exponential explosion of the LLM development. And see, we are getting already some errors here when running the test smoke. Okay, try to source this test smoke, and well, I guess this looks like some, where do we have the test smoke file? Backend test. Yeah, this looks like some Python error at some point, 17. Okay, I think it fixed it already.
Yeah.
Lucas Major.
No, I think it's a Dutch guy. Anyway, I would recommend watching it to Enrique as well. I was going to watch it again, actually.
Mm-hmm.
My small brain needs to watch things twice to process.
I like to watch videos that tell me what I already like and already know. It's always nice to just nod and not
Yeah,
That's
you can
not to yell at the screen.
reinforce your bubble, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, back then when I had Reddit, I'm not left-leaning, but I'm not conservative, and I used to follow the conservative subreddit, and I think it was an interesting way also of see something that I generally don't agree with, to keep my I don't know, like I guess like the critical part of my brain active, because the problem if you start just following the same communities that agree with your everything and follow the same interests you have, we're gonna stay like just running, biking, not doing anything that we are not doing at the moment.
Unless you turn into that guy who can't go to bed because somebody's wrong in the internet.
I think that's the problem, right?
Well, that's I got pulled. Well, that's kind of these. If you go to this certain type of social media, I think Reddit is also blamed that, but this idea of rage baiting and anger baiting, basically trying to get people engaged by showing them something they get pissed off and write about. But if you let that go, that's why I stay in my safety bubble in Mastodon, where everybody's just nice.
Well, I guess that's the other thing, is that it starts to feel more like community, and community when people are sort of like supportive and there's a sort of general sort of everybody's lifting each other up. So that's
Plus,
what
when it's
community is about.
positive in general,
Yeah.
when the baseline is positive, you don't interpret
Right.
something immediately
Right.
negative. Like you go to Twitter, I don't never been there, I haven't been there for a long time, but whenever there was something, you interpret it as negative, and then you figure out could it be positive if you had time before you were raging about it. But it
I
must
think
have,
we
and Google Plus, it was always like this thing where
right.
where people, okay, this sounds strange, but I probably misunderstood it first, and then you just,
I still think we should
Okay,
just rebuild Google Plus, Juhani.
just a comment here. We see that this is now at the stage where it's creating the branches, and I would have, see, that's what I mentioned before, that I was expecting based on my instructions for the LLM to ask me for confirmation. It didn't. But anyway, let's see. At least
Right.
it's on a new branch and a new commit, right? So it's not squashing everything else. So this is going to create a pull request, and let's see what it does with my GitHub command line utility, because if it works, it should create the create a new pull request. Sorry, this was on Codebear, not on GitHub, of course. So there is
Right.
the for Helio command line utility. I don't know if I have that one installed.
What I found, Enrique, using open code is that if you're, I haven't done it enough to know that there's a repeatable issue or a repeatable phenomenon, but if you were trying to create some very specific steps for the LLM to follow, like a workflow, I was doing one thing where I had an agent that orchestrated sub-agents, right? And it took quite a few false starts, right? So it would sort of start out and there's like, well, the orchestrator then starts doing some implementation. I'm like, whoa, stop. You're an orchestrator. You shouldn't be implementing things. Oh, yes, you're quite right. How, how silly of me. And then it was like, oh, let me make sure I've got this clearly written in my instructions. And then, so I had to steer it off doing these wrong things several times. But eventually, after enough sort of pushing it, it got to the point where it's like, okay, now I really do understand that. Every time you want to do implementation, go to the implementer agent. We're doing some sort of review, I'm going to go to a separate review agent. And then it got really consistent, but it did take quite a bit of trial and error for it to sort of get a clear instruction set somehow.
Yeah, exactly. You need adjustments. So see here, for example, I think my statement was clear, like don't commit or don't create a PR until I confirm, and it missed it for some reason. But my mistake was saying that this is GitHub and it's for Jaja, not GitHub. So what I'm going to do is deny the last one. Okay, this is the previous one, and I'll write something like I made a mistake. This is based on for Jaja, on Codebear, for Jaja, not GitHub. Is there CLI for Jaja? Can you install it? And I will set it up. And yeah, I think this also opens, when you start working with CLIs, the door for orchestration quite a bit, because you could have an agent that is just in charge of, like creating things, making PRs and merging them, analyzing the reviews.
I mean, I got some interesting, I spammed Juhani with some of this stuff, but I got some interesting points where, it was looking like it was going through, doing a bunch of work, and then showing a report about how the review agent had gone through and given everything a green light. So I actually abandoned that project, not the project itself, but that iteration of the project, and started it again, because what I think was missing was the kind of like, let's run the project into human verification before we move on. And I want to kind of see it running, not just get the validation that you think you've done everything correctly. So, yeah.
Okay, it seems that this is not getting my source file, so I'll probably need to do this manually. The login admin code, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, if I could have set this up with my token, in order to access this, I don't know if I would be able to open my, because it needs my password ultimately, right? Once you are logged in, but well, you can see that in order to create a PR, the command is very
Yeah.
simple. So
But I think the way to use this is to use the SSH keys.
Yeah.
All of this. At least
Only.
that's how I use. They work super well
Yeah.
with the CLIs, right?
yeah, but I first need to set up on the Codeberg website my create a token, have the token locally. But yeah,
Yeah.
you don't do it with password. You create the local SSH, and because
Yeah.
that's something also very. I was thinking of, and that was another conversation I had with an LLM. I was thinking of opening my SSH port at my home so I can connect remotely and start doing stuff. And the LLM said that that's a bad idea because you have like a lot of random computers scanning all the IPs, and the moment they see
Yeah.
that your port 22 is open, they start doing everything. If you really want to do that, avoid having login and password and just use an SSH key, because if I'm connecting from my laptop, they would need to first steal the SSH key that I have on my laptop, and so it
Yeah.
would be harder than password and username. But it said that, of course, you should not do that. You should find like a screen sharing or another solution.
I would really recommend you look at, if you haven't already, look at Tailscale, which basically, if you
Yeah,
haven't done it, yeah, that would be the only way I would. I mean, there are a couple of other ones I can't remember what they are that do the same thing, but
Yeah, it was another of the solutions that it gave me at some point. I didn't check it yet, but that was the other platform that mentioned.
yeah,
And
they're super
let's-
generous, so you can connect up to put 100 devices for free on your tailnet. Of course, most people don't have 100 devices, so it's very usable. Yeah.
See, we have Juhani Letimakis not thumbnailer, and the brands already push. Again, this is something that if I could get back now to my agent, I would ask to get a confirmation, verbal confirmation from me before pushing. Because if I could be pushing something that I don't like to this repository, and I think ultimately, for now, agents like humans need to be they need to be the last line between the agent and the reality. We need to click on that. That's the same thing we were doing with mobile apps, right? Like there was always a human clicking on publish, removing app, etc. So all the critical processes. But well, this changes very quick also. So who knows? We're gonna be doing the same in a few months or years. Okay, this is something that we can probably create as a draft, right? Okay, we don't have any API key here, nothing strange. Okay, new pull request, refactor, draft PR. Let's see. If we get it, if this works. Yeah, we mentioned that yesterday. Something that I found myself doing more and more is that if this, let's say I'm byte coding and for whatever reason this works, I would probably type here something like push it instead of coming to the console and do git push origin blah blah blah. Because you're in this mood, right, in this flow, and that's something that is not that efficient. You start delegating everything into the LLM, and I would personally keep it for myself.
Why don't you use the anti-gravity version control? It's very nice. That even generates your git commit.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm used to the terminal here. I have also like my own setup here, like Git, and then the branch, and then the colors. But yeah, I guess it's being an old dinosaur, having been used it.
Yeah, since I had to stop using SVN and go to Git after CVS. I never really got into. I understand Git commands, like I can run all of them manually, but I kind of don't like it. But I quite like the way Git works, and I used Git Kraken for a long time as a visual representation of all the different branches. It's worked super well. But the VS Code or anti-gravity version control is super nice. It's just on the left. You just click that one and you see what it is. Anti-gravity has this generate commit text as well, which I don't really use because it uses tokens. But it creates quite good commit description, so you can really read from there.
Yeah, I think it's also a matter of tooling, right? Like,
Of course,
I mean, when you've been
everybody,
using the
they
same thing
always.
for many years, you just don't want to or feel comfortable in that space. I try to get away from that as much as I can, but the reality is that we're comfortable animals, right? Like, take
True.
sometimes some effort to get out of what you've been doing for a number of years. But I had the same thing with the Android Studio. Android Studio had an interface to make commits and see the files, and it was very nice and visual. So there was a clear benefit. I was just very used to have the git add, git diff. I had also like aliases on my terminal to make like git meant git diff file. So I was very quick at operating in the terminal. And the only reason was only that I was doing that for years. That tool was probably better because you could see everything at once and you could navigate between different files and you could compare three at the same time. But that would require me probably like 1 week of trying it. And
Yeah. Life's too short.
It was actually quite interesting. So this week I wrote my first Android, well, I didn't write it, but I created my first Android application since maybe 3 years. And after 15 years of Android dev, I was quite comfortable with, first Eclipse and then Android Studio. Now I went back to Android Studio. It doesn't look anything. It's still based probably from some same code base. I don't know, but it doesn't look anything like it did before. I didn't find any of the places where I needed to build signed APKs and all of those things. So I think I will, when I get around it, I will probably ditch the Android Studio completely and go to the CLI tools from Eric and the other. Or it was Mike who created the couple
the
of
Android CLI.
community veterans created CLI tools for Android, and take a look at those maybe. The only thing I really like about Android Studio is how easy to take a screenshot and paste it to anti-gravity, but I guess CLI can do it manually for me. Just take a screenshot and look at it.
Yeah, it's very well connected. I still use Android Studio for things like warnings, lint, if you want to use tooling for debugging in terms of performance, networking, analyze the UI, like the entire layout tree node, and but the gap is also closing. Like I don't use it for many other things. Like my primary interface for coding is not really Android Studio when I'm doing Android development. It might be that
Do you have the same problem? Because I have anti-gravity is create code that doesn't compile. So basically I wrote features in anti-gravity and I open it Android Studio, it doesn't compile, and then I use the Gemini inside Android Studio to say fix this.
That's great workflow.
Yeah. So basically I have one instance of Gemini says fixing compilation errors. But
Nice.
the anti-gravity it's nice to see that they have the same problems we do. It forgot to add last curvy bracket at the end and stuff like that. So, there's one missing at here. So, but do you have? So, if you use the Android CLI, then of course anti-gravity will realize it because it will actually compile the stuff itself, right?
Yeah, and you can even provide it in this file at the beginning, right? Like this tool is installed, you can use it to deploy the APK or to install the APK or to build the APK, so it can. The same thing here, right? Like I didn't have on the terminal here, I didn't have the D application for Codever, the CLI, but I could create a file that I feed at the beginning and specify that, this is what you need to do when you're going to create a PR, when something is finished. If you need to deploy the artifact, use the Android CLI, use this other thing to start the test. It's a little bit of an ongoing process, as in which it's a little bit of the follows the Pareto rule also. You're going to be writing 80% of the file at the initial 20% of your development time. And at the end, it's going to be fine-tuning and small tweaks. That
one other thing that was really funny thing to find out by generating an app, they generate the same problems I had always. The notification icons were wrong color. It wasn't edge to edge. This part of the view, the toolbar, the app bar wasn't scrolling away right place. And I saw that Google even created skill for edge to edge to fix the problem, because it's always been completely impossible to figure out how it should be. And I was a UI specialist, if you could call it so, an Android dev 4 years ago, and I couldn't figure out how to configure the system UI correctly to always be there. So even anti-gravity, I had to just go back there. Well, now the notification icons are not visible. So, oops, exactly the same stuff I've been doing for.
Yeah, and it's oops, I think we lost Juhani, right?
He'll be back.
Yeah. We lost you for a little bit, Juhani.
Yeah, I was rambling. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so we can just take a look at what we got here. There is a smoke test class. It doesn't seem like it's testing a lot of things, but it's a start probably. Like this is something that we can start iterating. It's
Yeah.
trying to generate a thumbnail with a missing asset, getting the logo, getting the template, setting it up. So over time, as we develop more features, maybe it could be something for this initial file. Every time you develop a new feature, make sure that there is a relevant test in this file, etc. And it has also changed the way the application runs. Now we have the start dep file here, which before we had backend and frontend, right? Did we have before the start dep or?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. I don't know if it has changed anything here, but if we run the start depth, it seems correct, and it seems that we are effectively opening the here. We have a file here, I believe, right, in the screen caps.
Yeah.
So I can try dropping it and see if anything breaks. So drag and drop image. Seems to be stuck at okay.
Oh,
Seems to work, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Nice. I also like the small toast text here, right? The Hoover one. Next, go to editor, and let's see if our quick manual test.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to work mostly, right?
Well, it has same bugs that it had when you started. So
But you haven't broken any of the bugs. That's good news.
Nice. I guess we get our first small refactor here as a PR. So
Yeah. Nice.
I can even ask the LLM to provide me with a description with a comprehensive. This is anyway something that I would probably automate, as in up here we have one. As in every time it finishes, I don't want to switch to the terminal and write like git commit or anything that's too primitive. So I would probably just rely on the LLM doing it for me as soon as I confirm that everything is good.
Here's the question though.
Save.
I have for you, Enrique. It's like, are you defining a workflow? I mean, you're saying you're doing a lot of stuff in the terminal. But do you have a fixed workflow that you define, that you tell the LLM to follow?
It's very dynamic and it happens per project. A few things I end up doing in most projects. So the behavior I have mentioned for the for GitHub. I'm also working on a lot of self-hosting stuff. I have my own in-mic instance. I'm now migrating to my Mastodon instance. For Jejo, my many things, and I have also certain flow when I'm working on these things to verify that you're deploying to port that is not busy, verified. My router has an API that you can connect through, and I can remotely make the port forwarding and activation. So also verify that it works. Try to make the connection via this VPN externally to make sure that you can connect through the external IP, blah, blah, blah. But it's very dynamic. What I haven't done yet, but I think I will end up doing is having a Forgejo repository for my personal stuff, where I keep a list of call them like general skills for projects that I find more useful. Something like GitHub, something like self-deployment, Android development, website, where I'm connecting with Nextcloud, for example. I have another one that is synchronizing my Dropbox with my Nextcloud every few hours to avoid getting like the account suspended. And I'll probably be incorporating those into new projects, and you can even use, which I have done in the past, is using an LLM to get them merged. In order to avoid having many different skills, I take the LLM and say like, check this skill, this other one, and this other one, merge them into a single one, so I can just feed this simple skill at the beginning of the LLM flow.
Ah, that's cool. That's okay. Nice. Yeah, I think that's it's starting in my head. There's these sort of like sub-specialties starting to sort of bubble up, like workflow, sort of LLM workflow is a sort of subspecialty, right?
Yeah, my impression, or since I think my impression is that I'm focusing less on the code and more on the process. Or I'm starting to trust more the LLM on the code it generates and trusting it a little bit less on how it generates it. I'm not sure if this is going to keep developing this way, as in, I might assume that the code is perfect, I don't need to touch anything, but I don't know if it's going to be putting things in the wrong places or getting the wrong permissions or, I don't know, committing secrets, but yeah, I'm not sure if it's a bit of an LLM DevOps, general flow master manager.
Yeah.
So I think there's a thing we really should discuss. Maybe I'll produce a video to our channel about this. So I talked about this before. I think the LLMs, we need to make sure we don't just try to like slot LLMs into existing processes.
Yeah.
Because the fundamental change is much bigger. We need to take one step backwards and see, okay, where are the strengths of these tools? And where can we how can we change the way we operate to get the most value out of it? And I've gone to the conclusion that we need to break down the way we build software into two completely separate phases to get the most of the value of this one. The vibe coding, the fast iteration, all of this is extremely valuable as a communication tool to non-technical stakeholders, designers, developers, to understanding what we are going to be building. And if we try to then artificially think that now we are building also the real software and try to understand how we can fit that process into the existing workflow, we're just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think. In my head, we have to split the software development in two distinct parts. We have to start first with the vibe coding prototyping phase, and the prototyping is no longer going to be anything like prototyping before. This, in my opinion, this is the biggest change that LLMs are going to bring into how we build software, is we can vibe code a prototype with real business logic, real data. I keep saying this because it's important, to get to a point where we understand what we're going to be building, and then we're going to be building the software. Now, those are two completely separate things. The first thing is going to be prototype that looks and functions like the real software, but it's not safe to put into production because we have omitted all the guide rails, all of the kind of guidelines of how to build good software. And from that point on, we can build the real software, still probably with the LLM tools. And then, with Enrique's been talking here, becomes extremely important. Understanding how to control the LLMs, how to control the process, how to control multi-user repos, how to make sure everybody can work together. We're still going to have manual work, we're going to have LLM work, we're going to have safety, security, all of this kind of stuff come to play. But we can ignore all of that at the first phase to get the value of the massive speed. Like I said, I was writing the Android application and I literally had two windows open where one of them was a backend and one of them was the Android application, and they were both generating code at the same time. I said, okay, I need this API call in the backend, build this one, write the documentation, read the documentation, build the Android application, or run the Android application. So I'm able to build a server, backend API server, and the front-end application in 3 minutes. And that's not an application I put in the market. That's an application I showed a stakeholder. Is this what you mean?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, this is going to be the key value of LLMs. Don't try to slot your LLMs into the current workflows. Don't just, okay, I have 200 developers in a project building a thing. Now everybody's going to generate 3 times more code. That's not going to work. But think where the problem of software engineering is. The software engineering problem is a communication between humans, not communication to computers.
So I want to kind of try and reframe this a bit. I think we should reframe it a bit, Juhani. It's like, this is about software product development, right?
Right.
Not the engineering part is becoming less interesting, less, hands-on.
Well, I think it should become more hands-on, but yeah, I understand what you're trying to say.
But
I
it's
think
not
the
writing
engineering
code
part's
anymore,
becoming-
right?
But maybe, but we still have to own the code. Like Linus Torvalds said, it doesn't matter
True.
how you create the code, you still own the code.
That's true. That's true. I was just came off a call earlier today where it was just a group of people having a chat about AI in the kind of design world, and somebody had made a reference to a project they were on where they had delivered like a 300 slide presentation on all of the design work that had been done, and this was not like a project from 10 years ago. This is a project fairly recently, and I mean, it was clear. I mean, everyone was saying, listen, nobody reads this stuff, right? We're producing this stuff to get paid, kind of thing, but nobody's really reading this stuff. And I think you're on the right track here, because what people want is not the presentation, is not the thing. What they want is the actual running software. And where I'm a bit worried, we can have a longer discussion about it, is that ideally the running software gets you to a point of verification with ideally with the end users. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted. Fantastic. Or worse, not so good with other stakeholders who are proxies for the users. But without that verification, I think getting to that point of verification, actually, we'll see a lot of cultural problems to get organizations to think like that.
That's where the biggest problem.
But that's another topic, right?
Yeah, that's going to be because there's, like we said last time, there's a lot of people who have created a career out of agile, and that's what they want to do because that's what they know how to do. This we come into, we need to learn a new thing. But this is also the biggest risk I see. We see these surveys where, they look at, well, will we introduce LLMs to all of our developers, but we don't make anything better. Well, that just means you've done it wrong. Like if you just throw LLM into mix and don't change anything else, you just end up paying a lot of money for nothing, and that's not the right thing to do. Yeah. I think, interestingly, as an agency, the era of paying for a person per hour is going to be coming to an end in general. Projects are going to be all fixed price. We are now getting to a point where we can actually define software scope. And that has been a massive problem in software. Especially if you start up with limited budgets, you say, I want this software. You go to an agency and they go like, well, it's between 10,000 and 5 million euros. We don't know yet. And they're not wrong, because the agency cannot know. The agency doesn't want to carry the risk. Of course they don't, because they won't get the reward either. But they also literally don't know. They cannot know. There's so many variables. You get a spec from a stakeholder. They think they communicated clearly, but they don't. So you have to imagine the 80% left there, and everything is fake. But if you're able to spend a week or two to really spec it properly, now you eliminate this problem. And this is, in my opinion, going to be it's going to be much bigger change in software industry than people think. People think, okay, devs just write code faster. We can fire with designers, which neither of them is true. The skilled designers are going to be in much higher demand. With the Claude Code and Claude Design, all of those things in hands of a skilled designer are going to be way more powerful than in my hands. And the same thing with the coding tools. And
Agreed.
We can fix projects, we can create software, but we know what we're going to be building, and we can build higher quality software and faster. And the important thing is going to build the software that you actually wanted to be building. This is going to be.
I don't want to be the cynical guy, but I'm not sure how high on the list of requirements that last one is. The building software that the customers really want, sort of thing, in some organizations. But let's not go there. I don't want to take this whole thing into a dark corner. Let's move away, maybe.
If you run an agency for 25 years, you kind of sit in a dark corner. But that's a reality. I think there's going to be a massive gap between organizations who are able to understand the level of change that is going to be needed, and the ones who try to just do the same thing that they always done, just faster.
Right.
And
Right.
it's going to be a fundamental, it's going to be like company ending change.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be
Agreed.
like, how can you afford not to? It's completely going to
Yeah.
be crazy. I don't want to sound like AI tech bro, because I think I sound a bit like that. I'm actually quite AI skeptic, and I refuse to call it AI because there's no AI. It's LLM tools.
Yeah.
I'm very skeptical of new tools. I don't jump into all new tools all the time, like the presentation, Jasper, you sent me. I didn't jump to Kotlin immediately when Kotlin became available
Right.
for Android either. So I'm actually quite conservative with my tech choices. But I'm also always been in the kind of UI front end, the communication solving bucket, and figuring out what we actually should be building is the problem. And now that I have a tool in my hands that I say with my own eyes and own hands can see that it solves the real problem in this industry, it's difficult not to be excited about it.
100%. You are a tech brother, just to make that clear for the record. Oh, it's frozen. I shocked him so much. I broke his internet connection.
Yeah, I think everybody hijacks
You did.
interesting stuff, right? Like you have the crypto bros, like the blockchain is a very interesting technology. The people selling like random cryptocurrencies are not, and the same with AI. Like LLMs are a fantastic technology that is bound to change everything, but people selling you AI courses are not that interesting.
That's what everyone's selling, right? That's unfortunately half the videos.
All right, I think we should wrap up for today. My internet is going to lag in 3 seconds again.
Yeah.
But there's always 2 lags. Shall we do again tomorrow?
I think we should. I'm sorry, Enrique. You go. You're about to say something.
Oh, you go, Jasper.
Well, I think what we should do is so this is week 2 on this project. Let's try to figure out how we get to a place that by the end of the week we've got a functioning thing that we can actually use, and maybe think about what we're going to start doing next week. Because I suspect after this week it'll start to get a little bit more like tweaking, and that's going to be less interesting on stream, I think.
In my opinion, going kind of back to what I was just ranting about, is we need to go back to the UI and build the functionality we need. Because now we kind of, we built the tech, we built first UI a little bit, then we built a little bit tech, then we refactored to make it better. Now we need to go back to build the actual thing. So I'd say tomorrow we go feature complete with some technical limitations. You know, maybe the background cropping doesn't work correctly, but everything should be possible to arrange correctly. We should be able to export the thumbnail that might have a little bit badly cropped backgrounds, and we can definitely do that tomorrow. Then we will see. Cool. I'll say thank you, Jasper. Thank you, Enrique, and see everybody tomorrow.
You guys.